We are here to introduce to you the Social Cognitive Career Theory, or SCCT for short. First published in 1994 by Robert Lent, Stephen Brown, and Gail Hackett, Social Cognitive Career Theory is another learning theory in career development. It is extremely researched and is thoroughly described in the literature. SCCT is founded on principles put forth by Albert Bandura's social learning, now known as social cognitive theory. His theory emphasizes the impact of observation and modeling on a person's learned behaviors, and the focus of SCT is on how an individual's internal processing of information affects his or her behavior. Two major aspects of Bandura's SCT are most germane to the learning theories of career counseling. First is the triadic reciprocal nature of causation, and second is self-efficacy. Social learning, or social cognitive theory, looks at the interaction among the person, the environment, and their behavior. So again, this is with the person being composed of his or her own thoughts, beliefs, and perceptions. This model of understanding human behavior is shown in Bandura's triadic reciprocal interaction model. As defined by Albert Bandura, self-efficacy is a judgment of one's capability to accomplish a certain level of performance. And in the context of SCCT, self-efficacy is defined similarly. However, the three founding researchers, Lent, Brown, and Hackett, were mostly interested in looking at how self-efficacy affects factors that impact our academic and career interests. So, SCCT pays a particular attention to person variables. They then created a model that expanded on Bandura's model that includes factors such as self-efficacy, outcome expectations, and goal selection in determining career development. As defined by Robert Lent, self-efficacy is a dynamic set of beliefs that are linked to particular performance domains and activities. SCCT then takes the perspective that self-efficacy may change over time and may differ across situations. Self-efficacy expectations influence the initiation of specific behavior and the maintenance of behavior in response to barriers and difficulties. SCCT further theorized that self-efficacy expectations are shaped by four primary information sources or learning experiences. First is vicarious learning. Second is personal performance accomplishments. Third is social persuasion. And last, physiological and affective states. Lent suggested that of the four sources of information or learning experience, personal performance accomplishments have the most powerful influence on the status of self-efficacy. SCCT offers three segmental yet interlocking process models of career development, seeking to explain first, the development of academic and vocational interest; second, how individuals make educational and career choices; and third, educational and career performance and stability. In keeping with its roots in Bandura's SCT, the idea is that the relationship among these factors is one of triadic reciprocality, with each affecting the other. Rather than using a triangular diagram to display this relationship, however, Lent, Brown, and Hackett used flowcharts with feedback loops. This flowchart is designed to first illustrate triadic reciprocal relationships and serve as segmental models to explain the development of career interest, the making of career choices, and the quality of career performance. I know this looks a lot, but let's try to break it down to explain each component of this model. So let's start with the first three outer influences: personal inputs or factors, contextual influences that are proximal to the choice, and background contextual affordances. So what are personal inputs or personal factors? These are our predispositions, our attitudes, our personality, or our tendencies to act in a certain way. Other personal inputs or qualities of an individual include their gender, their race, ethnicity, and also things like whether or not they have a disability or a medical condition. So what are background contextual affordances? These factors are what they call distal influences, or factors that have occurred earlier in life that still have an impact on one's choice and or actions in the present. So something that happened in the past could be gender socialization. So how you socialize as a child according to your gender can influence the choices that you make today. And lastly, contextual influences proximal to the choice. For short, we can call them proximal influence. These are things or factors that occur or are present right before you're going to make a choice. So they have more of an immediate impact on one's choices or behavior. So let's explore these two concepts a little bit further. Background and proximal contextual factors are distinct from one another. However, they do have few things in common. Both types of contextual factors can act as barriers and supports to deciding to pursue a certain career path. However, again, what makes this different from each other is the quote-unquote distance from the choice. So an example of background factor that can act as a barrier is socioeconomic status. Growing up in a family that doesn't have enough money or resources to buy for basic needs such as food can definitely impact your performance in school, your access to opportunities, and whether or not you'll develop high self-efficacy when it comes to going to college. So this is something that perhaps has happened in the past or is ongoing that is distant from your decision. Let's say to go to college, but it's still having an impact on you. For a proximal barrier example is more of an immediate concern, like the cost of tuition or tuition fee for going to university. This is something that can immediately and definitely impact your level of interest in attending a university. Then, examples of support also differ. A background factor such as being a part of a family that encourages you to study and celebrate education is something enduring and can start as early as let's say preschool. So again, this is something that has happened in the past and is distant to the current decision you're making now. And yet, it still has an influence. And lastly, an example of proximal support is maybe you qualify for a scholarship, and so that will definitely affect or not you're going to make the decision to pursue a college degree. So looking back at our model, the proximal contextual influences have an immediate impact on your interest or your choice goals and your choice actions. These factors act as moderators, and these are things that can amplify or diminish the likelihood of you making the likelihood of something occurring. These contextual influences can increase the likelihood or decrease the likelihood of your interest, shape your goals, or it can immediately impact and amplify whether or not your choice goals impact your choice actions. For example, you are really interested in going to med school and you're really passionate about biology. So if a contextual influence, let's say the amount of money you have to go to college is gonna diminish or amplify your interest, impacts your goals. So let's say I have a lot of money and I can go to whatever college I choose. Well then, I can definitely go ahead and pursue my interest, and that will amplify how my interest impact my goals. However, let's say I don't have enough money and my family needs my financial support. So my interest in med school might have a diminished impact on my choice goals because my goals are going to be based upon some of the contextual influences, right? My goals are going to be taking care of my family's needs first. So let's examine now the second level of the model. These cognitive influences that impact career choice are self-efficacy, learning experiences, outcome expectations, and performance domains and attainments. So again, self-efficacy is our perception or judgment of our ability to perform a specific task. A term they use in the literature for self-efficacy is that it is domain-specific, and that means your level of self-efficacy can change depending on the domain you're looking at. So I could have a domain of mathematics and a domain of biology, and so my self-efficacy can vary across those two domains. Learning experiences are any experience in which learning takes place. Outcome expectations are our prediction of what will happen if you engage in a task. And performance domains and attainments are our track record of how will you perform in certain areas or your accomplishments. So self-efficacy answers the question of, can I do this? While outcome expectations answer, what will happen if I do this? Outcome expectations come in three types. There are physical outcomes, like I'll get a raise if I do my job well. And there are social outcomes, like everyone at work will think I'm awesome if I do my job well. And lastly, there are self-evaluative outcomes, like I'll think I'm awesome for doing my job well. Again, outcome expectations are what will happen if I do this, and self-efficacy is to answer the question, can I do this? Self-efficacy is not an accurate estimate of one's ability to perform a specific task. For example, I can be making a 3.5 grade on all my statistics tests, and at the same time, I can have low self-efficacy. I'm feeling like I'm not good at statistics, and this can also affect my outcome expectations, where I think I'm going to fail every test even though in the past I've made this. Truly, if I wasn't good at mathematics, then I'd probably be failing and making Fs. Research shows that self-efficacy has a higher impact on our decisions to engage in activity than outcome expectations. That's why, even though we might know something good will happen as an outcome of action, if we don't believe we can perform the task needed to get that outcome, then we're less likely to engage in an activity. So, as you can see, it's kind of like self-efficacy is how you feel about something, and outcome expectations are what you know about it. Both self-efficacy and outcome expectations come together when it comes to making a decision. Before we go on to our next set of concepts, I wanted to point out the cyclical nature of this part of the model. As you can see, there's a loop between performance and to learning out learning experiences. And so learning experiences help us develop our self-efficacy, and they influence our outcome expectations, our predictions. Therefore, outcome expectations and self-efficacy influence each other. They go back and forth. So ultimately, all these factors, self-efficacy and outcome expectations, they influence our performance. Granted, outcome expectations have an indirect influence on performance because they go through self-efficacy to then have an impact on performance. Okay, so let's go back to our main model. As you can see, self-efficacy and outcome expectations also influence interest, goals, and actions. Looking at the model, we can see the relationship between these three concepts as being fairly linear. In what you're interested, like your hobbies, your favorite subjects, your values, they influence the type of goals you set, and the types of goals you set to influence and shape the actions you take. But keep in mind those proximal factors that we looked at earlier, as they can also influence the relationships between our interest, goals, and actions. So again, as I mentioned earlier in the example of I want to go to med school, The contextual factors like the amount of money I have to go to college can influence whether or not I get to go to the med school or pre-med college of my choice, or whether or not I decide to pursue a different career that's going to allow me to make more money. It's actually very similar to the model we've been looking at so far. It involves the same components of self-efficacy, performance, and outcome expectations. It just has different pathways that lead to either interest or disinterest. So interest develops through a tandem with self-efficacy. High self-efficacy and positive outcome expectations increase the likelihood that you're going to engage in activity. And the more you engage in activity, the better you get at it over time usually. And ultimately, this high performance increases your self-efficacy and leads to a high interest. So the opposite can be said for disinterest. So where you can have any order of negative expectations, low performance, or low self-efficacy, all of these decrease the likelihood that you'll engage in an activity, and eventually you lose interest or avoid the activity again. It's important to not forget the personal and contextual factors that influence these factors. These contextual factors and personal factors influence our interest in an indirect way. Such as an example is whether a woman has an interest in being a mechanic. So, due to an external process like gender socialization, she could receive negative messages about girls or ladies getting involved in quote-unquote man's work. Or maybe perhaps her family is not a good source of support for her interest. When she tries to help her dad fix the car, and he adds on to these negative experiences. Like she was told by her dad that ladies shouldn't mess with cars. Or maybe she doesn't have the opportunity to engage in mechanic-related activities. This would be a more proximal influence because she doesn't engage in these activities since there are no programs offered in their area. Hence, these proximal and background factors can interfere with whether or not our interests develop over time. So, as we've learned so far, many factors can influence career choices and interests and behaviors that lead us to make choices that we do in our career. And so, all of these factors interact and have an influence on each other. These were all explained through the comprehensive framework of SCCP on the development of career interest, career choice, and performance that is grounded in self-efficacy theory. Thank you for taking your time to watch this video, and we hope that you've learned something from this presentation. Bye!